Hello, this is a guy who likes fanfiction and is too lazy to read, so here is the Institute Saga 4 in audio form. Check the description for the links to the author. Chapter 21, Silver Surfer. We may have a problem. Clark looked up at Reed's embarrassed admission and stared at the rocky man before him. Reed. Yeah. Reed sighed with a shrug of his larger-than-normal shoulders. We made a discovery regarding the Silver Surfer. A very annoying discovery. I kinda like it. Johnny laughed as he rippled into visibility. Pranks are just so awesome when you're invisible. A long arm snaked through the doorway to slap Johnny on the back of his head with a rolled-up newspaper, then the arm shortened as its owner, Susan Richards, entered the office. Damn it, Sue. Johnny whined. That hurt. Shut it or I'll give you a hot food. Ben Grimm growled as he walked in, flames dancing around his fully human form. What the heck? Clark managed and Reed gave him a pleading look. The surfer destabilized our powers, meaning that every time we touch, we seem to trade powers. Like this. Before Johnny could dodge, Reed tapped him on his shoulder, causing Reed to go semi-transparent and Johnny to morph into a rocky caricature of his former self. Damn it, Reed. He groaned before Ben dope slapped him, turning Johnny back to how he normally was while Ben regained his rocky form. So, you need Kryptonian help. Clark offered, only to pause as Reed shook his head. That might be a bad move. You see. After I punched him once, he grabbed my arm, then suddenly my powers vanished. Karsta stated as she flew in. Fortunately it was only temporary, no more than an hour, but it scared the hell out of me while it lasted. It was also very lucky for us that Captain Britain was helping to fix the London Eye and he caught me on my way down. He can destabilize our powers and negate Kryptonians. Reed summarized. Plus, he's leaving holes. Clark blinked at the apparent non sequitur. Holes. Holes. Reed confirmed. One of them seems to have drained the Thames. While they were trying to take down the surfer, I had to put the London Eye back on its axle. Karsta interjected. I'd just finished when the surfer took them all down, so I tried to take him down. Didn't work. I held back too much on my initial attack, I didn't want to splash him. You mean break him? Johnny asked and Karsta shook her head. He relies on his board to fly and by the time I reached him, we were over a mile up. I meant splash. Johnny's face went blank for a long moment, then he paled and winced. I so didn't need that image. Clark cleared his throat in order to regain their attention. Once they were looking at him, he spoke. So we have a flying surfer able to create giant holes of unknown purpose, one who is able to cause solar-initiated meta-human powers to switch and to power down Kryptonians. Reed, can you track him? Reed nodded slowly. Of course, but what good will it do? Mutants and tech users for starters. Clark supplied, causing Reed to facepalm at having overlooked the obvious. Plus, we only know he can alter solar-initiated meta-human powers. What about those that activated due to environment or stress? Give me 10 minutes and I'll have Sif and the Warriors 4 here as well. Forest Guardians and a warrior-trained Kryptonian should tilt the balance in our favor, even if Nightwing has to be relegated to a support role. So, we have a plan. Ben asked and Reed lowered his hand to look at his oldest friend. Yes, we have a plan. Clark of Kent, Clan L, I come leading the Warriors 4 to thine aid. Sif declaimed as she strode into the room, the other 4 following her. We have read the information you sent us and have brought with us one of our skyboats, that we may chase this being through the skies. Clark blinked. I thought that your skyboats were too big for the doors and I have a standing order with control to alert me to any use of the Bifrost. We traded a few techniques with some of Konoha's sword users. In return, they helped us develop the use of scrolls. Hagun stated, pulling a metal tube out of his belt and holding it so that Clark could see the end cap of the scroll stored inside. These are incredibly useful. Odin himself spent a day and a half sealing many valuable treasures into scrolls so that they could be stored more safely and take up less room. We each have a skyboat on us. Volstagg added with a wide grin. And supplies. Volstagg seemed to shrink slightly as Sif turned to give him a quelling glance, then she returned her attention to Clark, who was hiding a slight smile. "Will you be leading us into glorious battle? If you can hold him, I'll be rustling up some more help." Clark demurred. "I've already called up a couple others to assist. Since this will be a mobility issue, I asked Morph to join us as well as David Xanatos." "Is he not just a human?" Sif queried. "But I have a really nice suit." A voice responded from behind them as David Xanatos, wearing his red exosuit with the helmet retracted, stepped into the office. "Clark, Goliath and the others send their best. I'm sure Fox would, but she, Mystique and Pepper are currently out shopping, along with Alex and Harry. Those two are great playmates." "Nice suit." Volstagg grinned as he circled the multi-billionaire. "I upgraded it recently, with Lexington's help and some Kryptonian technology," Xanatos admitted. "Tony and I have developed a bit of a rivalry with our suits, one in which I have a slight advantage. Tony may be a genius and have Jarvis as his helper, but I have Lexington and a large number of other highly intelligent people I can trust. People who come up with the most interesting of ideas." "Is that a modified Asgardian wind cape?" Nightwing asked, tapping one of the caped wings of Xanatos' suit. "It is, or at least an Earth-made reproduction," David agreed. "Modified to fit over a Kryptonian crystal thrust array wing skeleton, giving me superior speed and agility with a lower energy signature." "Wind cape?" Clark queried. "Old technology, abandoned when we moved to our lift generators," Sif explained. "We never thought to try combining it with anything. Perhaps the Skyguard idea can be finally put into commission. Maybe I can help with that." "For a price, of course," Xanatos offered. "Still looking for the business opportunities, I see." Clark laughed as Xanatos smirked at him. "I have a fix on the surfer." Reed's voice sounded from the COMM. "He seems to be headed for Japan." Sif didn't bother to acknowledge as she sprinted through the hall of doors towards the door leading to the Henshin Rangers, the Warriors for Morph, wearing the shape that had once belonged to Archangel, and Xanatos following close behind. Piling through the doorway, they barely slowed as they raced through the headquarters of the Henshin Rangers, ignoring the shocked expression of the girl in Chinook armor, and almost exploded out of the front door, Hagun already holding the scroll. "Unseal." A cloud of smoke marked the appearance of the skyboat and Sif vaulted over the side, grabbing the control tiller as her fellow Asgardians piled aboard. "Lifting." She snapped as the boat rose into the sky, Nightwing, Morph and Xanatos flanking it. "Reed, we need a vector," Xanatos transmitted. "I'm sending you a link, David." "Got it." "Southeast. The Sif is coming in at about Mach 2, so we need to hustle." Glancing at the holographic compass, Sif swung the boat around, almost pitching Volstagg out, and cranked the drive unit almost to maximum. Despite the protective force field bubble, her hair whipped wildly in the breeze of their passage. "Nightwing, find him and shadow him." She sent through the comm device that they had adopted. Midgardians were so useful at times. "On it." Nightwing sent as he seemed to vanish, a brief crack announcing that he had broken the sound barrier. Sif glanced at the holodisplay and noted where Nightwing's dot was, then adjusted course very slightly. "This should be fun." Volstagg grinned as he checked his sword, the blade briefly lighting up as he channeled his will through it. Hagun nodded, his dour face somehow showing his eagerness for the impending combat. "Well, this is different," Victor Toombs allowed as he looked around the large hall. "So many heroes. You'll get used to it," a voice said, and Victor half turned to see the Falcon beside him. "First time in a mass team-up." Toombs nodded and Sam Wilson waved around. "Clark's been pulling in as many flyers as possible. Sure, we're light on Kryptonians, but that's because we know that the surfer can depower them. They'll be on catching duty. You know, in case we lose our wings or something." "Who are those?" Victor asked, and Sam followed his gaze. "Oh, the gargoyles. Various clans, London, New Olympus, Manhattan, the huge guy is Goliath. Xanatos based his armor on him. Looks like quite a few new Olympians are with them. And the statues. Gargoyles." Sam repeated with a slight smile. "Different time zones, so we can have some ready to go at any time." "That's Archangel talking to Goliath. he's looking better than he was last time I saw him. Hope he returns to the Guardians soon. Heard that he and Lexington were considering getting married, wonder if Lexi'd transfer from the Manhattan clan. So, what's the plan? Toombs asked and Sam glanced at him. Basically we fly through the portal, capture the surfer or knock him out or something and bring him back here. Huh. We're getting good readings. Reed stated. We are indeed. Otto Octavius mused. Reed, check my conclusions, please. They are based on several assumptions that I have yet to prove, but... Reed Richards stretched his neck so that he could look at the screen held in Otto's tentacle. If that's true. Lexington. We need to reprogram the tertiary arrays. If this is correct. There he is. Fondrel shouted, pulling a scroll from his belt, an action mirrored by the other two male Asgardians. As one, they all jumped out of the skyboat, their scrolls unfurling, then they were engulfed in clouds of smoke from which they emerged, each one piloting their own craft. Activate shields and try to take him down. Sif ordered. Nightwing, get below us. Xanatos, engage. Morph, send word. The surfer blinked as one flying craft was joined by three, their appearance marked by segrays of energy that he had never before associated with such events. Banking slightly, he moved to pass around the aerial obstacles, only for them to change course. So, they wanted a chase, did they? Then he would oblige. And once they were dealt with, he would complete his task and summon his master. We've got him on the run. Volstagg cheered as he accelerated, using one hand on the control yoke while he waved his sword in the other. He's trying to get us to spread out so he can take us one at a time. Sif countered as she hefted her spear. Fondrel. Hagun, flank left. Volstagg, form up on me and flank right to pincer him. Morph, get above, Xanatos, how fast is your suit? Very. Why, David replied. Loop ahead, we'll try to get his attention so you can grab him. Understood. The odd beings were trying to flank him. Aiming for a large building, the surfer reached for his power and used it to fly straight through, altering the space-time continuum slightly to let him pass unhindered and without leaving a hole for his pursuers. Angling his board upwards, he began to turn, gathering his power to deal with the first slash. Damn, that had to hurt. Morph winced, then he triggered his COMM. Xanatos just tackled him straight off his board. Something's happening, he's changing from silver to pewter. David sent, then another voice broke in. This is Reed, our scans indicate his power source is the board he's riding. Separate him from the board. Already done. Morph replied with a grin, then his eyes widened. Xanatos. Dodge. Chapter 22, Mission of the Surfer. David blinked as the dot in his HUD passed through the wire frame of the building he was flying over. Looking down, he spotted a distortion forming and flexed his wings, banking hard and bringing his thrusters to max. As he did so, the surfer emerged from the wall like a blade out of a pond, right into David's flight path. Xanatos just tackled him straight off his board. Something's happening, he's changing from silver to pewter. David sent, then another voice broke in. This is Reed, our scans indicate his power source is the board he's riding. Separate him from the board. Already done. Morph replied with a grin, then his eyes widened. Xanatos. Dodge. David responded instantly, hurling the surfer away from him in order to boost himself away from his now former captive. An instant later, the board that surfer had been riding slashed through the space he had been occupying before slowing to a halt underneath the falling Safa's feet. Damn it. Morph cursed. The Safa's gone all shiny again, he's powered back up. We might need some help here. The ache of the tackle that had separated him from his board vanished as the power cosmic flowed through him once more and the surfer looked at his adversaries with a newfound, albeit begrudging respect. They had found his weakness. His brow creased in thought, then he dived, curving round the building that he had passed through. Normally, he would do this the normal way, ensuring that the result was the perfect size for his master, but the locals had proven dangerous. He was sure that his master would not mind just one hole being slightly out of alignment. The power cosmic began to form around his clenched fists. He's doing something. Morph shouted into his communicator. Back up! Back up! Back up! Now! 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 A portal suddenly opened just below him. Everyone go! Saga shouted as she opened a portal. Victor blinked, then felt himself being towed along by the falcon. As soon as we're through, dive to get out of the way of the powered flyers. Falcon half shouted as Victor regained his balance and started to run, his wings ready to be deployed. It's going to be chaotic out there. Before Victor could respond, he was through the portal and falling. He felt Falcon push him away and used his wings to spin, checking that no one was close enough to collide with him, then he spread his wings and soared into battle. The surfer blinked as a portal of a type he had never encountered before suddenly formed above him and almost instantly began disgorging flying figures. The power cosmic flickered as he realized that he might actually be in trouble. After all, beyond a certain point, quantity takes on a quality all of its own. Pulling into a sharp loop, the surfer dodged the first few attacks and shifted a portion of his power so that he could sense everything around him. He needed to break free to fulfill his mission, but there were already 100 flyers swarming him and more arriving by the second. Time to deal with the main problem. Xanatos followed the surfer's gaze, then his eyes flashed back to the silvery energy forming around the being's fists. Realization dawned and he triggered the priority channel. Close the portal. David shouted into his comm and the flow of flyers ended a brief second before the portal was hit by a blast fired from the surfer. Did she get the portal closed? Saga's down. Guardsman calmed. Still alive, but the backlash of having her portal disrupted like that knocked her out. Thanks for the warning, we managed to stop anyone else being caught in the effect, but any reinforcements will have to come the long way. We're redirecting them through the Hall of Doors as we speak. David nodded, then his HUD highlighted a trio of tech-enhanced flyers, 2 of whom had wings like he did. A few brief eye twitches changed his comm channels. Eagle, Falcon, Iron Man, this is Xanatos. The surfer seems to be holding his own too well for my liking, but I have a plan. When don't you? Tony Stark shot back. Okay, let's hear it. The natives were exceedingly annoying. Although he had managed to create a field that depowered any of the solar-boosted natives whose physical abilities were a severe threat to him, there were just so many different types of powers that even he was having difficulty keeping track. Some of them seemed to be powered purely from within while others used worn gems that blazed with energies that his enhanced vision could perceive, yet were in other colors that he had never actually encountered before. Some used machines to slice through the air while a few soared on natural wings. And all of them were trying to separate him from the source of his power. The fragment of Galactus which allowed his master to always know where he was and which fed him the power he needed to create the beacon pulse that would summon his master so that he could sate his eternal hunger for even a short while. But first, he would need to find a way to clear the skies. Or find skies that were clear. Now. Xanatos sent an Iron Man launched a spread of decoy rockets and flashbangs at the surfer, providing a distraction and cover. Xanatos powered through the short-lived wall of flame, aiming for the surfer's head, only to be sent spinning through the air by a high-powered backhand. Abort. He managed even as a pair of hands snagged him out of the skies, stabilizing him. Falcon here, what happened? He saw me coming. The rockets did nothing. Xanatos growled. He saw me, too. Victor replied. I barely dodged the blast he sent my way. David frowned. How had the surfer seen Bald Eagle? Victor had been aiming for his knees from behind. Unless. All units, surfer has full spherical vision. David sent as he reactivated his thrusters and nodded in gratitude to the Kryptonian who had caught him. He has no blind spots, repeat, no blind spots. How the hell did the surfer get the Byakugan? Someone asked over the comm and David blinked in confusion. What the heck was a Byakugan? He was going to have to try something new. Pulling the power cosmic into a shroud around himself, the surfer arrowed straight down. The ground raced up towards him as he reshaped the shroud into a multi-edged cone before he flattened himself against his board and began to spin. What the fuck? Victor gasped as the surfer shot downwards so fast that the sonic boom caused many of the flyers to tumble like leaves in a gale for a moment. Rather than pull out, the surfer slammed into the ground, causing a massive cloud of dust to explode upwards, spreading out into a mushroom shape as it did so. Did he just commit suicide? Bereft of their opponent, many of the flyers looped wide to avoid the dust cloud while others swooped down to approach the impact point. As Victor watched, Iron Man landed near the base of the dust cloud and knelt down so that he could place his hand against the ground. "I'm picking up vibrations consistent with tunneling," he reported after a long moment. "I guess this means that he's still alive and we have to dig him out." Wait. It's stopped. Victor entered a shallow, spiraling dive, barely noticing Falcon take up position beside him, almost wing to wing. "Any idea what just happened?" Sam shouted. "He created a hole?" Victor mused. "Reed, this is Tombs. How many holes does the surfer need to create to finish his pattern?" "Finish his, ah. Oh dear. That was the last hole, wasn't it?" Victor groaned. The hole was made and his improvisation hadn't failed him. It was at the perfect depth, the perfect width and within half a degree of the perfect angle. Now all he had to do was to summon his master, and none of the flyers seemed space-capable. All he needed to do was gather his power, coat the lower half of the hole with a portion of it, push the rest behind him and... If the surfer had descended fast, his ascent was even faster. Although Victor only saw him as a silver flash before the cyclone his passage had created hurled him out of control through the air, the sensors that Otto Octavius had spent days installing, adjusting, and calibrating had managed to track him, reporting on his route, straight up, and his speed, Mach 3.52. The precision of the readouts was lost on Victor as he tried to avoid hitting the ground or losing his dinner from the sudden turbulence. By Hawkins' chair? Reed Richards gasped. "Everyone, the surfer is now above the atmosphere and his energy readings are spiking. 3 ships are on approach and will have weapons lock in 20 seconds. Zed's voice snapped. "Too long." Reed yelped as the readings on his screen rocketed upwards before the sensors burned out. "Whatever he's doing, he's just done it." The beacon pulse had been sent. His master was on his way and would feast once more. The surfer looked down at the planet below him, teeming with life force that would sustain the mighty Galactus. Once his master arrived, the surfer would begin his search anew. Nothing was important to him, save fulfilling his task. Nothing met wait. What was Slash? Got him. The tactical officer exulted. The Leonidas reports that it has got the board in its tractor beam. Pulling the surfer into cargo bay 2, security reports that they're ready to take him into captivity. Excellent work. The captain commented. Prepare to head back to Prime Base so that we can interrogate him and find out just what he thought he was doing. Course laid in. The helmsman said. Surfer is in the bay and doors are closed. Leonidas reports that it is securing the board. The captain nodded. Excellent. Take us out. Aye, sir. We have a problem. A big problem. Clark stated in a flat voice. As you no doubt heard, I've activated the Omega protocols, Ragnarok variant. We need as much help as we can get. Bruce Banner stood up and triggered the holodisplay to show the Silver Surfer sat in a containment cell. We've been talking to the Silver Surfer and although he hasn't said much, we've been able to piece together what's heading our way. It's Galactus. A large number of people in the meeting hall gasped or swore and the image changed. Galactus is an entity which exists only partially in our time-space. Bruce continued as the hologram began to show various pictures of a tentacled cloud. Like an iceberg, over 90% of it is, under the surface, so to speak. How do you know? A voice called out and Bruce gave a mirthless smile. Good question. Kryptonian records, mainly, some of which were acquired from the Kree, the Skrull, and the Shi'ar. The Asgardians were able to confirm some of it and provide details which helped to get closer to understanding the threat headed our way as well as some history. Galactus is believed to predate the Big Bang. Don't ask how, because we don't know, but he is older than our universe. Although he regularly consumes entire planets, he is the lesser of two evils. Should he be destroyed, something worse will come through. So, we can't kill it. What can we do? Otto Octavius asked. We can drive it off. Bruce supplied. Rumor has it that 3 planets have managed that feat, the first being a place called Zenla. One of my fastest scout ships is already on the way there to ask for aid. Zed stated from beside the stage. Another is headed to Cybertron. The third known planet is too far away, even for a Kryptonian hyperlight drive, for one of our ships to get there and back in under 3 months. It'll be more useful in the evacuations. We're evacuating Earth. Bruce confirmed. Governor General Zed and his people have created temporary camps and already, several million people have been transferred to New Krypton with priority given to women and children. We're recruiting as many males as possible to help in the defenses, but they need training and we're not sure how long it will be before. Bruce trailed off as an alarm blared, then everyone staggered as a thought that was more than simple telepathy echoed across the solar system. I hunger. Chapter 23, Battle for Existence. We have Galactus on approach, incoming from 30 degrees above the ecliptic, bearing 103 anti-spinewards. Current speed 0.9 c but decelerating fast. Estimated 00 in lunar orbit, but on the far side from the moon in 30 minutes. Clark inhaled deeply, his air mask providing him with air that he barely needed due to the effect that the unfiltered solar radiation was having on him. Around him, in a cloud that almost blocked the sun, floated over 3 million other Kryptonians, all of whom had volunteered for the battle, despite knowing that the hopes of success were almost non-existent. Scattered amongst the Kryptonians were the ships of the Solar Defense Force, their golden hulls gleaming in the Earth light. Fighters orbited them, some of them arcing out on trajectories designed to let them scan the incoming entity, trying to find any clues as to its weaknesses. Although the force assembled would have caused any admiral from the Shi'ar, Skrull, and Kree empires to urgently rethink their battle plans, Clark knew deep inside that it would not be enough. A pair of eyes opened, then closed briefly before opening once more. For a long moment, they stared blankly at the starscape. Surfer. The surfer looked at the one-eyed man curiously, but otherwise didn't move. He is coming. I sense his presence. He is. Nick Fury stated. We know that we must not kill him. We know that it is possible to drive him off. How? I have only seen it done once before. The surfer mused. A being of power who dwelled inside a planet, one who matched my master, whom my master recognized. That being is not here. For the last 30 orbits of your world as you measure time, I have not sensed it. What was the name of that world? Fury pressed. Cybertron. A fist smashed through the crystal barrier, shattering it with surprising silence. A second fist followed suit almost half a mile away, then a third even as the first figure launched itself out of its former confinement. Soon, over a dozen clouds of crystal shards were glinting in the light. Talon landed with an expert backwing, then straightened up, looming over the suddenly quiet crowd in front of the Xavier Institute. Listen up. He half shouted, the unusual timbre of his vocal cords giving his voice a growling undertone. We can get you to safety, but not if you try to rush. Form lines and only carry 2 cases each at most, backpacks included. If you have more, go to the left where you can leave the excess with your name on them. Hopefully, you'll get to come back to collect. Any questions? No. Good. Now, stay calm and you'll live. Let's get going. As the Generation X members took over guiding the suddenly obedient civilians, Talon glanced to where Wolverine was watching him with an odd smile. What? Just thinking that Slim did better than he knew when he asked you to take over. Logan chuckled. Thanks. Sensor confirmation. Galactus has almost reached 0 velocity, engage and drive him back. Clark hurled himself forwards, the Kryptonian volunteers forming up behind him as he threw himself into battle. Ahead of him, the cloudy shape that was the portion of Galactus that existed inside the universe, seemed to expand as he accelerated towards it. There must be another way to stop him. Fury half shouted. Zenla managed. That was the first planet I offered to my master. The surfer stated calmly. He refused to sate his hunger on it as he had made a promise to spare it. Who? Fury pressed. Who did he make the promise to? I do not know. He made the promise before my awakening as his herald. Clark punched through the tentacle that tried to wrap around him. The remains of the complex construction, neither organic, technological nor energy but a fusion of all three, seemed to float away as it disintegrated, only for another to take its place. Strafing runs are having virtually no effect. Clark grabbed a larger tentacle and pushed with all of his strength, trying to move Galactus away from the world he called home, but the entity didn't even twitch. "Sir, we need to move." The president shook his head firmly, even though his eyes remained fixed on the protesters outside the White House grounds and the visible cues for the emergency portals beyond them. "I will go, but not yet," he said calmly, ignoring the looks his Secret Service bodyguards were exchanging. "For now, I need to be here. America must know that its leader did not run. Let's try another way." Fury groaned. "You said that your master needs to feed. On what? Energy. The energy of a living planet can sate his hunger for a while. What sort of energy? Galactus' approach speed has been decreased by 1.2%. The sensor officer reported. Estimated extra time before planetary contact, 9.2 minutes. Great. Clark muttered as he looped round to build up momentum for another strike against Galactus. Over 1 million Kryptonians only by 10 minutes. "My king, we are ready." T'Challa nodded. The cost of purchasing the dimensional shifting technology from Dr. Doom have been high, almost a full % of the remaining vibranium ore in Wakanda, but the devices had been installed and the planned destination scouted. "Do it," he said firmly. "Take my people to safety." Turning to look at the screen he had linked to the feed from one of the surveillance satellites, his eyes narrowed in satisfaction at the sight of the green of Wakanda changing shade. Even if Earth was destroyed, Wakanda would live on. Of course, now he had to file the demmed paperwork for a dome. Even a world-ending crisis wouldn't prevent the pen pushers from making their annoying demands. "Reed, Otto, Mysterio, Victor, you all ready?" The scientists on the various consoles nodded as a group of agents brought the Safa's board into the lab. The silvery humanoid stared at it almost hungrily as it floated in the chamber designed to nullify its powers. A hissing of pressurized air announced the liberation of the board and the surfer reached out to take it, his skin rippling back to pure silver as he made contact. "All right," Fury said as he glared at the being who had led Galactus to Earth. "You have your board. Give us the demonstration we need and you'll be free so long as you stay out of the fight." "Very well." The scientists bent over their consoles as the surfer held up his hands and summoned a sphere of energy into being. The figures raced towards the distant speck, lit from behind. A micrometeorite impacted one of the figures and shattered into a brief cloud of dust. The figure's course didn't even waver. Galactus' estimated time of intercept has been increased by 5 minutes. "Hold the line," Clark ordered. "And remember, for every 5 more minutes we buy, 500,000 people get a chance to live." A shudder ran through Galactus and Clark threw himself back into the fight, punching and pushing with everything he had. While there was no way that they were going to win this battle, he would delay the end for as long as he could. No matter what it cost him. "We have the readings and we've come up with a way to create the energy we need," Reed reported. "However, there are 2 problems. The first is that we'll need to use the Krypton World Engine to do it. The second is that we need to get it into position and it takes quite a few Kryptonians to move since all the tugs are currently trying to hold back Galactus." Fury didn't respond for a long moment, then he smiled. "Gentlemen, I believe that the solution has just presented itself." Reed flexed his neck to look at the entrance behind him where a shocked SHIELD agent was leading a group of Kryptonians in. Kryptonians that he recognized. "But I attended your funerals." Doom gasped, shock causing him to forego his normal mode of speaking. "Reports of our deaths were greatly exaggerated." Azlan snarked with a wide grin. "So, what's the problem?" "But how?" Reed whispered. "Later." Fury snapped. "We have a planet to save first. Let's move." "Where to?" Ipfaro asked curiously. The surfer flew out of the atmosphere, mentally marking the location of the planet he had been held on. He would continue to scout out other worlds, since the natives were too much of a threat to him for now, but in several centuries' time, they would have forgotten him and he could return to procure sustenance for his master. A familiar sensation caught his attention and he adjusted course slightly. Although he had given his word he would not interfere with the attempts of the natives to rail against their fate, he would watch and wait for his master to sate his overwhelming hunger and, for a while, be able to truly think once more. We need to hurry. Otto barked as he used his tentacles to catapult himself into the control room even as the world engine shifted. Fortunately, the secondary air plants can take the remaining load. Reed said as he pulled himself to a second console and began entering commands with incredible speed, his arms flexing like whips as he manipulated the tactile holoscreens. Entering the primary conversion algorithms now. Mysterio added. Doom is accessing the schematics of the world engine in preparation for modifying the systems to generate the energy required. Let's hope this works. Otto grunted as sudden G-forces pushed him hard into his chair. We have a lot of work to do, and not much time to do it in. We will be ready. Doom promised. Galactus is almost at the atmosphere. Repeat, Galactus is almost at the atmosphere. Clark disengaged and fell back into the outer reaches of the atmosphere, moving out of Galactus' shadow. As the feeling of solar-induced recharging flooded his body, he looked up at the looming entity. Come on. He muttered to himself. Recharge faster. So this is how the world ends. Talon quoted softly as he looked up at the darkened sky as he walked across the trampled grass into the mansion. Not with a bang, but with a whimper. Mr. President. It's time. The agents crowded round their charge and chivied him towards the portal. The surfer drew to a halt and looked down as Galactus began to extend himself towards the holes that the surfer had created, holes that would allow the eternally voracious to tap into the flows of life energy and drain them. What was that? The world engine floated above the upper reaches of the sun, grav lenses focusing thousands of square miles worth of sunlight onto the receptors. The collected energy poured through the systems, being transmuted in the process, emerging from the top of the engine as a near-solid beam of energy that lanced across the 8 light minutes between it and Galactus, impacting on the entity. I feed. Galactus froze, his tentacles hovering around the Earth, then he began to pull himself away, accelerating slowly but surely towards the source of his newfound nourishment. Orbiting his master, the surfer accompanied him, carefully avoiding the beam of power that lanced across space, power that had saved the planet behind them. Power that felt exactly like that which he had demonstrated in exchange for his freedom. Galactus has disengaged. I repeat, Galactus has disengaged. Earth is safe. Earth is safe. Thank God. Talon muttered as he sagged in relief in the doorway, then he turned round to look at the pile of suitcases awaiting their owners to reclaim them. Of course, this is going to be a bloody nightmare to sort out. Ow. Language. May Parker scolded as she lowered her hand from delivering the dope slap. Talon rubbed the back of his head, then frowned down at the smaller woman. Aren't you supposed to be on New Krypton with the others? Chapter 24, Neighbors. You died. Clark managed as he stared at the group who were grinning at him. All of you, but how? Solar energy. AZ land supplied and Clark face-palmed hard enough to cause a small shockwave. The crystal coffins. The sunlight revived you. We were mostly dead. Shangri supplied, his grin growing wider. And remember, if someone is mostly dead, they are still slightly alive. Of course, if someone is really dead, there's only one thing you can do. I know I'm going to regret this. Clark muttered to himself. All right, what's that? Go through his pockets and look for loose change. Half the revived Kryptonian chorused before they all started laughing as Clark shook his head. I think that dying may have affected them. Zed said quietly from beside Clark. Of course, having them back. I think that we will be declaring this day to be a holiday. Given that we stopped Galactus and saved Earth, I agree. Clark replied. Speaking of Galactus, my people are already setting the framework of our continued safety into place. I think you should take a look. Clark stared at the sight before him. From the Golden Feathers observation deck, he could see the world engine pumping out a beam of solid energy that lanced almost a light minute through space before striking the semi-gaseous form of Galactus. Around the world engine, a bustling of activity seemed to slowly flow outwards, leaving behind it the start of a skeletal form of what would eventually be, according to the plans being projected nearby, a ring-shaped space station several hundred kilometers across. Impressive, isn't it? Zed asked as he and Ursa touched down just beside him. We are not trying to duplicate the world engine, not yet, at any rate, merely the portions of it which take in the solar energy and transform it into the beam that feeds Galactus. For which my master is most grateful. Another voice stated, and Clark half turned as the Silver Surfer stepped up on his other side, his board floating just behind him as if tethered. As long as the star burns and the energy flows, his eternal hunger shall be sated. Clark nodded and looked back at the station. All that just for a single energy system. 6, actually. Zed corrected him. The idea is simple, each one will be able to match the world engine for output, but by running them at a half of that power level, they will last far longer. With 6, we can have 2 active, 2 ready to activate and 2 being repaired or upgraded, all on a rotating basis. So, it looks like we have a permanent guest. Clark said with a disbelieving chuckle. And you are going to be his ambassador? I am not. The Surfer stated. Galactus has decided to restore the memories he took from me when I agreed to become his herald in exchange for the sparing of Zenla. Once he has done so, I will depart once more, heading to Zenlatu. What is it? Zenla is here. Or, by Jupiter, at least. Zed said slowly. Here, these are the planets that Brainiac digitized before we halted his rampage. The Surfer took the pad and looked at it curiously. Contractaxia, Gunova, Hujay, Yanth, Cybertron, Beta, Megan, Zenla. Zenla. My people are still working on a way to reverse the process that Brainiac used. Zed supplied. For now, we have them in a secure facility near Jupiter. I'm sorry. If it helps, once a place has been digitized, no time passes for those caught in the process. Then I will go and see if I can aid them. The Surfer declared before glancing at the distant, faintly illuminated form of Galactus. My master has sent the one who will speak for him. Clark followed the Surfer's gaze, quickly spotting the blue-clad figure in the purple helmet. What's her name? He asked curiously. Thanks for coming. Connor Von Doom half turned from his conversation with Isaiah to see Clark entering the meeting hall with someone he had never seen before. The woman in question stood almost 7 feet tall and was dressed in a skin-tight blue outfit which contrasted with the purple helmet that she wore. Only her eyes and mouth were visible, the rest of her skin was concealed by her uniform. Wow, these are the protectors? She asked and Clark nodded. They are Patriot, Guardsman, Gatekeeper, Lady Britain, Black Panther, and Morph. Once we have figured out how to digitize Zenla, the Surfer has expressed an interest in joining our ranks. Several protectors nodded slowly as they thought about the power levels the Silver Surfer had displayed. Galacta is going to act as her father's emissary to Earth, New Krypton, the Asgardian realms and, should we succeed in restoring them, the 17 worlds stolen by Brainiac. However, she has agreed to become the first reservist of the protectors, meaning that should we hit a problem that is more than we can cope with, Galacta will give us whatever help she can. Since she wields the power cosmic to a level even greater than the Silver Surfer, that will be a lot of aid. First, I'll be helping to restore the worlds that this Brainiac claimed for his collection. Galacta chirped with a wide smile. It'll be interesting, touring multiple planets in the same solar system. The memories my father gave me indicate that he has never come across more than 3 habitable worlds in one system before, so for there to be 19. It's going to get complicated. Clark sighed. I think that we're going to have to increase the size of the team quite a bit. Not to mention creating a whole new set of halls of doors and cross-link them. I can see the headaches approaching. You think you have it bad? Zed asked as he entered the room. We're going to have to create an entirely new governmental level to keep things under control. Some sort of Grand Council or something. And it's almost certain that you will be the representative from New Krypton. Clark pointed out, causing Zed to scowl. There'll be 19 of us on the council. 19. Any group larger than 12 will become unable to govern efficiently. It's a law of nature. It'll be more than that. Asgard and the other worlds. You'll have an Asgardian and a frost giant, and maybe even an elf. Clark started to chuckle and Zod glared at him. You know that the people of Earth will probably choose you as their representative. Clark's laughter died as if a stasis field had snapped into existence. I do not wish for a promotion at this time. T'Challa grumbled. Maybe I could suggest someone else. Clark mused. I mean, Xanatos is well suited to the role. That he is. Zod allowed. That he is. Clark flopped into the sofa beside Mystique, who promptly shifted position so that she could snuggle up against him. Another long day? She asked curiously and Clark nodded slowly. Zod's starting to put the framework of the Grand Council together. He sighed. I've been going to all of the non-hostile Yggdrasil dimensions, and to Asgard itself, in order to set in motion the process for choosing their own representative for the council. Asgard was the easiest. Odin decided that Thor should be his representative as training for when Odin finally retires and Thor takes over. Of course, that'll cut down on his time with the Avengers, so he's assigned Thor's best friend Baldur to help cover for him. Jotunheim agreed to drop its low-grade war with Asgard in exchange for membership. The elves of Alfheim are debating which one of their own to send while the people of Vanaheim are in consultation with Asgard due to how close the two realms are. They've been intermarrying for centuries but never actually merged due to astrogeographic reasons. The dwarves of Nidavellir are holding clan meetings to choose their emissary. I had to suggest that they chose one not of a clan in order to avoid the appearance of favoring one clan over another. All in all, it's been quite exhausting. Raven hummed comfortingly as she tightened her hug on her husband. After a few moments, she lifted her head to look at him and giggled, before lowering her head back down onto his chest. Ah, Raven. Eric said from the door. I was going to come back later. Raven watched him close the door as quietly as he could, but the steady beat of Clark's heart showed that his sleep hadn't been disturbed by the interruption. I wouldn't go in there. Eric said to Chris and Laura. Your father's obviously had a long day and he needs his rest. Okay. Chris sighed as he let Laura pull him back down to ground level. In that case, we'll ask you. Static asked if we wanted to join in with a training day with the Teen Titans. They're trying to cross-train with as many people as possible. I see nothing wrong with that. Eric mused. However, I will ask that Storm accompanies you as a responsible adult. I can be responsible. Chris half-whined, only for Laura to sigh and gently dope-slap him. You not adult yet. She pointed out. Okay. Good point. Chris sighed. Come on, let's find Miss Monroe. Eric smiled as he watched the duo run off. I sometimes wonder if I was that young. Talon commented from a nearby door. I never was. Eric sighed. I never was. Headline story tonight, Soul System defended. That's right, Mark. Speaking for her father, the cosmic entity known as Galactus, Galacta had this to say. For centuries, my father's hunger has led to many planets being destroyed due to its overwhelming nature. The natives of the Soul System have managed to find a way to ensure that my father is now sated and will continue to be so, for so long as the soon-to-be activated ring station functions. In gratitude for the action that has halted his interstellar rampage and restored his mind and power, my father has vowed to protect the worlds of this system, both those in this time-space and those in the attached subdimensions, against any external threats. In addition to this incredible story, New Krypton News has received information suggesting that the Silver Surfer, now going by the name of Norinrad, will soon be joining the ranks of the Protectors, the superhero team that is led by Clark Kent himself. Indeed he is, Vicky, and with the power of the Silver Surfer and the Protectors and Galactus guarding against external threats, it would seem that the future is going to be very safe indeed. Well, Bastion, what do you make of this? Interesting. Zola replied as he looked around at the gray world that both beings had managed to reach. My internal scanners indicate that the laws of physics may be very slightly different here. My scanners detect movement. I see it too. Zola said as he transformed into his silvery mode. My scanners have it, shape is human, but the internal readings aren't. Both enhanced beings waited as the distant figure approached and soon it stopped barely 5 paces from them and the portal just behind them. Who are you? It finally managed to ask in a rasping voice. I am Modok, one of the leaders of Hydra. I am Bastion, likewise. The entity stared at them through dead eyes and Zola mentally noted the absence of any breathing. Finally, the being spoke. We are Hive. Zola inhaled sharply and Modok half turned to give him a quizzical look. The Red Skull told me about a being called Hive, the one who led Hydra centuries ago, but who was trapped on another world. If this is him, then all of Hydra's factions will unite once more and we shall be able to set in motion new plans that will in time allow us to claim first the Earth, then the entire solar system. And then the universe, even if it takes decades to set the plans in motion. Zola finished with a grin before turning back to the third figure. Of course, you need to prove that you are whom you say you are. Show us your true form. The figure didn't respond verbally, but his skin darkened as tentacles started to replace his hair. Hail Hydra! Zola whispered almost reverently. Chapter 25, The Return. The blur of translight seemed to shatter and at the helm of the multi-kilometer vessel, Scott Summers quickly scanned the readouts. Location confirmed, Sol system. He reported, then he frowned. However, it would appear that there have been some changes in the last 4 months. Such as Xavier prompted from his command chair located beside, and slightly lower than, Lilandra's presence throne. They've managed to unshrink all the planets. Scott stated as he triggered a holo display that showed the 19 worlds sharing the same orbit in a manner similar to beads on a string. However, there's something at Stellar North that I don't recognize. The holo display zoomed in on the beam of light being fired from a ring-shaped station, following it upwards until it vanished into a roiling cloud. Galactus! Lilandra gasped. That is Galactus. Just as I was feeling grateful that we had managed to shift the Phoenix from my soul into the crystal. Jean Grey groaned from the observation balcony above the bridge floor. This would have been a perfect time to unleash its power. Incoming challenge from Sol Station Prime. The communications tech noted. And there is a vessel on intercept course, coming in at 6 times our maximum sublight speed. Tell them who we are. Lilandra ordered quickly. And give us visual on the incoming craft. Looks like a javelin. Scott commented as he glanced at the image. An upgraded one, has parts I've never seen before. Message from the incoming craft, it's someone called Guardsman. Ah, young Connor Von Doom. Charles said in recognition. Directing incoming craft to main landing bay. My beloved, perhaps we should go and reassure our visitor that we did indeed succeed. Charles suggested as he rose from his chair, offering his arm to Lilandra. And maybe find out just what has happened in our absence. An excellent idea, my consort. Lilandra agreed. Lilandra and Xavier stepped out into the landing bay just in time to see the gunmetal grey craft glide to a halt above the deck, extending its landing gear before setting down lightly. A ramp extended from its fuselage and Connor strode down, his eyes quickly locating them. Welcome back, Majestrix Lilandra, Dr. Xavier. He said, earning a raised eyebrow. How did you know we succeeded? Charles asked curiously and Connor waved at the bay that they were in. Ship this size? Huge viewing ports spanning multiple decks instead of thick armor plating? Giant hangars? No signs of any weapons damage? Had to be official. The sigil of the Shi'ar throne world on the prow was the final giveaway. I assume that you wish to meet with the Grand Council. The what? Charles and Lilandra chorused. We've made some changes, and are in the process of expanding the protectors. Connor explained. I have a gate with me, let me pull it out. Connor vanished back up the ramp as Charles and Lilandra exchanged confused looks, then he reappeared holding a door-sized container. Okay, big guy. He called over his shoulder. I'll lead them through here. Thanks for bringing me and I'll see you back at base. The javelin closed up and lifted into the air, rotating smoothly before accelerating out of the bay and back towards Earth, dwindling into a speck of light incredibly fast. Let me set this up, then while the big guy sends word back and gets things started, Martha can give you a welcome home meal. I have missed her cooking. Charles admitted. As have I. Lilandra added. I wonder if I could hire her for my own staff. We may need Cyclops and the others to help give the report. Connor interjected. If you could call them, please. Of course. Charles agreed, raising one hand to his head to help him focus. Where are we going? Charles asked as Connor led the group to an obviously new platform holding a single gate. To the Grand Council. Connor explained as they stepped through the gate and found themselves in a second, larger hall of doors. It's this way. Looking round in curiosity, the group followed Connor past a group of armored guardsmen of multiple races and through a very large gate into a giant hall. Even as they entered, the javelin that Connor had arrived at the flagship in was landing, the giant doors behind it slowly closing. You made good time. Connor called, then he half-turned. We're still recruiting, but for now, meet the Grand Council. You already know council leaders of New Krypton, next to him is. Charles let his mind wander as he looked around the gigantic hall, relying on his trained memory to absorb the introductions of the various counselors and their planets of origin, then Connor's words broke through his reverie. And last but most definitely not least, Optimus Prime of Cybertron. Charles blinked, looking at the six-wheeled transport vehicle that Connor had just pointed to, a vehicle parked close to the javelin. He's in the truck. In a manner of speaking, that is true. A deep voice filled with amusement said, then the truck's outer shell seemed to crack. As Charles watched in shock, the truck transformed into a giant metal humanoid. That's different. Scott muttered from behind him and Charles nodded in stunned agreement. An instant later, a similar transformation occurred with the javelin and within seconds, two giant humanoids stood facing them. Meet one of the newest members of the Protectors. Connor grinned, waving at the giant who had been a space plane until a few seconds ago. Megatronus. Purple eyes took in the stunned expressions of the newcomers and metal lips quirked into a slight smirk. I see they are overcome by my magnificence. You are quite imposing for a humanoid. A new voice agreed and Charles's eyes widened as a metallic humanoid balancing on a flying board circled round Megatronus. And this is Norinrad, the Silver Surfer, also part of the Protectors. Connor supplied. What did we miss, exactly? That is quite a story. Charles admitted as he accepted a small whiskey. I'm impressed. It was quite interesting. Eric admitted, earning an amused glance from Charles. But enough about us, how did your mission go? It was a success, although we came very close to losing on a couple of occasions. Lilandra admitted. Several of those who chose to come with us lost their lives in combat, we brought them back with us for honorable burial. They gave their lives valiantly, like the 14. Charles intoned, then he blinked. Okay, I just sensed quite a bit of humor there. What happened? We didn't mention that. Clark asked, then he face-palmed. Okay. The sun pulled a Lazarus on them. They returned just in time to haul the world engine to where we needed it. Charles looked blankly at Clark for a long moment, then shook his head. I'm glad to hear that the 14 are back, but, well. I know. Raven said softly. Part of you is now thinking why should they get a second chance when those who followed me did not. I thought I was the telepath here. Charles half-joked, then he sighed. But yes. It's wrong of me. But very human. Eric confirmed, causing Charles to look at him in shock. What? When you said human, there was no anger, disdain. Charles said slowly. Blame May and Martha. Eric said with a wry smile. Do you honestly think that any trace of my former attitude could survive being in proximity to two such formidable ladies? Very true. Charles admitted while Lilandra just about managed not to laugh. Very true. We're still having issues with two of the new worlds. Clark sighed. Apparently the worlds Beta and Megan were at war with each other before Brainiac snatched them and they tried to resume it once we freed them. I had to call in almost 1 million Kryptonians and several thousand Cybertronians to enforce the ceasefire between them, and until they sign a peace agreement and manage to keep it for at least a year, they won't be allowed to have representatives on the council or send applicants to join any of the other super teams. Fortunately, we were able to dismantle their war fleets and make it quite clear that they wouldn't be allowed to try and build new ones. The Shi'ar have experience with situations like that. In fact, it is part of our culture and one of the foundations of our religion. Lilandra offered. Perhaps I can send a few of our diplomats to help you develop your own methods. That would be appreciated. Clark agreed. Thank you. This gets worse and worse. Zola growled as he scrolled through the assembled reports. A council to coordinate the actions of 19 worlds plus several adjacent subdimensions, multiple law structures being carefully revamped towards greater homogeneity, increased combat applications of the solar defense fleet with the inclusions of cybernetic sentience, an alliance with one of the 3 galaxy-spanning empires, a special archway donated by Black Ink that detects those with traitorous intentions. It is getting difficult to see how we can take our rightful place without a truly massive military to help us. We are in a different reality. Modoc pointed out from where he was interfaced with the communication systems, directing the rebuilding of the shattered city ruins. We have an entire universe to seize the resources we require from. As long as we can keep that damned hive from killing our greatest assets. Zola growled, glancing at the doorway through which the entity in question had departed through half an hour previously. How are we meant to rebuild our elite forces if that damned monster keeps consuming them to improve itself? There is a stasis tube in my possession. Zola's face slowly creased into a grin wider than that which any human could have duplicated. I like the way you think. Clark, we have a new contact. Guardsman said, leading a small group of obvious meta-humans into the office where Clark was wrestling with the never-ending paperwork. Everyone, this is Clark Kent, also known as Superman. Contact. Clark looked curiously at the new arrivals. Their leader was a red-armored man with hair fully silvered by age, and beside him stood a robed female elf. An armored dwarf and a giant feline humanoid flanked them. Greetings. The elderly man said with a slight smile. My name is David Richardson, Fire Lord of the Imperial States of America, based in the Gemini realities. It is quite amusing to us that you designate this reality as Alpha. We don't have that designation in our reality cluster. Clark stared at him before switching off his screens to allow him to give his visitor his full attention. Please, be seated. Who are your friends? Clark Kent, be known to my fiancée Iladriel, my chief bodyguard KG Ska, and my tactical advisor Wulfric Axritter. Kraga was too big to accompany us, so he's watching over the gate. Clark raised an eyebrow, then a one-way hollow screen briefly appeared, showing him a view of a serpentine dragon lying half-coiled around the portal. We are here on behalf of Emperor Erarch on a mission of peace. David continued, and Clark leaned back slightly in his chair, using his vision and super hearing to keep track of any signs that David might be trying to shade the truth or even lie outright. Most of his attention, though, was focused on pondering the ramifications of encountering a polity that was spread through more dimensions than the moonbase had domes for. The only thing he knew for certain was that the future was going to change once again. Check the description for the links to the author.